This is interesting. You spoke about the depiction of Muslims in America. When people think of an image of Muslims in America, they will think of someone who looks more like me than like you.
Right.
Right. Even though one thing you and I both have common is that we were both raised as Muslims. You're not a convert. You're an African American raised as a Muslim.
Right.
Talk about your experiences as just a Muslim growing up in America, in the Midwest, in New York, and elsewhere. I mean,
that's a very broad. It's a lot to it.
First things that come to mind.
First things. Like you said, there needs to be a recognition of the African American population of Muslims in this country, which represent about 1/3 of Muslims in this country, who are some of the pioneers who went into these neighborhoods where people were afraid to go into and built masjids, built mosques. Yeah. And, but there's no, like there was a special on, I'm not going to say where, but the special about Muslims in America, and there was not a single African American Muslim in that special. And to me, it has to do with everything I am. My ideals, my belief system, and it's something that I've always known to be a part of who I am. So for it not to be recognized, it's a little tough, because I mean we're in this thing together, and we have to be together now. You ask about my experiences, and for the most part I appreciate everything that I've been taught and learned. What I do not appreciate is people that are ignorant about certain things and treat you a certain way based upon that ignorance.
So they're condescending or patronizing.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, just the way because of my name. I mean, I'm not immediately recognized as a Muslim. No one would just look at me and be like, oh, he's, but when it comes to matters of my name or anything government-based, then it's always I remember I applied for my passport. It was not too long after 9/11, and I get this package back, and I'm like, oh, I got my passport. But no, I opened the package, and there's like an entire. It was so many forms that were asking about every single aspect of my entire life, like every job I've ever had, every address I've ever had, my siblings' identities, where they live, where they work, their children, my parent, like just asking about and I'm like, what is this? Called a couple of my friends, like, hey, when you got your passport, did you have? They're like, nah, I don't know. The passport came in like a week, and I'm like, wow. So I called the passport, and they're like, oh, it's random. I'm like, really? Random? Just like when I'm at the airport, that's random too, right? So I mean, stuff like that, where people treat you like the other, when there's no better time for us to be together as American people than like now, when we're dealing with stuff like this. But when we are treated as the other, it makes it far more difficult for us, because it's like, I always say this, but I don't think people recognize as much that if something happens, like, we would be victims as well. Like, we live here too, and we are Americans too. And so not only are we dealing with the increased scrutiny and the discrimination based on the fact that we're Muslim, but we're dealing with that element as well, the extremist element as well, because that is very much separate from who we are, from what we have ever learned. I haven't known you for a long time, but I pretty much have an idea of what you learned, because it was probably the same as what I learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this leads into what seems to be some of the threads in the movie. From looking at the trailer itself, it's the story of this Muslim kid who is raised in America, in Middle America, and now he's going to college, and he's dealing with identity issues of being both a Muslim as well as a college student, and perhaps some of his experiences in life make him compel him to just alienate himself from his Islamic tradition.
Right.
I mean, is this something that you find that Muslims in general seem to be going through in America, where they're being made to choose, you know, one or the other, or they want to choose one or the other as though there's a conflict?
Yeah, I certainly believe there's an identity crisis of sorts within the Muslim community in America. Not only because we were raised very different than the average American. You know, the majority of this country is Christian, and you know, you're going to public school with people who are coming back from winter break with Christmas presents, and you know, like, what'd you get for Christmas? What are you gonna be for Halloween? Like, oh, we don't celebrate Halloween, you know. So not only are we dealing with that element, but now there's this extra element of you guys are terrorists, you guys are extremists, your book is evil, like you are, and for people, it's so far left field for people that they're just like, what? Like but it also has some people questioning things like, whoa, wait, are we? Because, you know, that's not what I've learned, but if all these experts and all these people are saying this, it's like, so people are obvious, especially young people, especially people who are still searching for who they are. But you know, I feel like it's a wonderful opportunity for us to face this and deal with it and really define what it means. And this definition might take a while because this journey, it's such a new and interesting journey, and it might take a while, but if we come out of this sort of recognizing or defining what it means, then I think we'll be in really good shape, you know? And
this is an interesting point, that on the one hand, America itself, and Muslims in particular, are in this position where we're being forced to figure out who we are, what we are. But you're also saying that it's something healthy, that hopefully a lot of good can really come out of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like there for a long time was, there's still racism in there, but there for a long time was blatant, you know, outright racism to African American people and women in the United States. It was accepted. It was just the way it was. And it was not until these men and women stood up and said, we will not take this anymore. And there were movements, and there were marches, and there was just this huge change that happened. But it was only because it got to a point where we could not go on that way anymore. And it had to be dealt with. This sort of, it's sort of similar. It's not, you know, that's a much longer story, that of the African American in the United States. A lot of layers. But it's the same idea. Since 9/11, there's been this underlying sort of discrimination based upon people's association with Islam. Now, I think specifically with the Ground Zero situation.
The Cordoba House, the mosque.
Yeah, Park 51.
Yeah, Park 51.
I think that has sort of brought it to a head where it sort of needs to be dealt with. And the way we deal with this now is going to mean a lot in the future. You know, we can either come together as a people, as a country, which is what we need to do, or we can handle it similar to the poor ways we've handled it in the past. Seems to me that this would be embarrassing, claiming to be a country of freedom and democracy, and looking back to see all the things that we've done why not say this time we won't do that? Why not say this time we're going to be better? We're going to come together and we're going to handle this like it needs to be handled. And separate this element and make an effort towards dispelling these myths and taking this element out of the average perception of Muslims.